You're listening to Where You Live with Gene Sullivan.
Welcome back to Where You Live. I'm Gene Sullivan, broadcasting from the True North Painting Studios. The show is brought to you by American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency, and Extreme Exteriors. Before we get back to our story of just a very unruly homeowners association in Florida, and more importantly, we're asking the question, how does this happen? How does an HOA get to this point? And more importantly, what can we do to make sure it doesn't happen in our HOA? I want to let our listeners know we've got a free gift for you. We put together a bi-monthly newsletter called What's New. A lot of the topics that we'll cover on the show, we cover in further detail. People that are on the show are contributors to that letter. It's a great resource, and it's a great, easy read, and it's yours free for the asking. Give us a call, won't you, at New Concepts during the week at 952-922-2500. Ask for Lori, and she'll make sure you start receiving your copy either electronically or by mail. We're talking about the Mainland 3 Homeowners Association, where the power went to two people, a gentleman by the name of William Villela and Earl Ostrander, who ostensibly ended up putting their wives on as other board members. And then anytime people got upset because they were ruling the HOA with an iron fist, what they would do is they would simply adjourn the meeting. And they thought, that'll stop everybody from being able to talk or being able to have any power at all. And I was asking, how does this happen? And as I've mentioned already on the show today, number one, we've got to realize that when this happens in an HOA, it doesn't happen overnight. It's something that happens slowly. And how does it happen? It happens because we have this misguided understanding about our freedom. Freedom isn't something that is established and then goes on autopilot. You need to constantly guard and practice your freedom and your liberty. And you do that by participation in the government around you. If you don't participate in the government around you, you can't really complain about who you get for representing you in Congress. You can't fault whoever is the president of the United States. You can't fault who is your state legislator if you don't take the time to vote. You can't take the time to just complain and say, oh, woe is me. I'm a victim here. Because, look, we have just got unreasonable bullies who are running our homeowner association. And like I said, it needs our participation. So what part of this sounds like you can just go on autopilot and say that everything will be fine? What a lot of people do at this point, when the HOA doesn't work, and you know it if you listen to this show for any length of time, people generally turn to a state legislator, and then they ask a legislator to come up with what? More rules, another law that will probably take care of this. And all that they're doing is that they're taking their freedom and liberty and they're exchanging it from one person to another. So instead of the couple people that are in the HOA, you turn to the state, to a number of other state legislators and say, we want you to be a bully over them and to tell them to stop. But then all of a sudden, the state legislator continues on and other legislation goes through and you go, hey, wait a minute. Now you're doing more than what we wanted. And now all you've done is you've just exchanged one tyrant for another. And why? Because the real reason things aren't going right is because you haven't taken the time to be involved and to participate in the process. You know, you need to remember that can we establish one thing maybe here once and for all on the show? And that is this idea or notion that people say, well, I bought a home in an HOA because everything is going to be taken care of for me. Can we get rid of this? Can we get realtors who will promise and swear that they will not say, oh, yeah, HOAs are great. You don't have to do anything. We need to change that and say that an HOA is not a place where everything is done for me. An HOA is a place where I pay money to have some things taken care of for me. I don't want everything taken care of for me. If I do, then I've given my control of my freedom and my liberty over to someone else and what they think is best for me. In the case of the Mainland 3 Homeowners Association, the homeowners there weren't involved for quite some time. And who were the two people that stepped forward? Well, two people that they ended up realizing a little bit later on that were kind of bullies and tyrants in the way that they were being dealt with and handled. And so can we come and understand that anytime I own something, part of my freedom and my liberty also means responsibility to act, responsibility to get involved. Now, yes, I guess you have the freedom not to vote, but then you can't complain about having a tyrant over you then, can you? The bottom line is when you own something, you're responsible for it. You are. Let me give some examples. You own a car or an automobile. Who changes the oil when the oil needs changing? Who makes sure that the tires get changed when the tires need changing? Who makes sure it goes in for checkups and for repairs? You do. Why? Because you own that thing. You own that automobile. Nobody else is going to take care of it for you. You need to be responsible. Now let's take a look at the biggest purchase for most Americans that they will ever have in their entire life, and that is the home. What we call the great American dream, a person's ability to be able to take what they have worked hard for and to be able to purchase something, their own home, something that they can call theirs. Well, guess what? If you have a home, don't you need to pay for the repairs and the maintenance of your home? To give this idea that everything's taken care of for me, the HOA is going to be responsible. Why would you allow them to take control over your life and your liberty and your freedom? With an HOA, let's remember that only some things are taken care of for me. Those are grounds care, roof replacement, insurance, and things like that. But an HOA means that if I'm going to be involved, I need to be a part of the governing aspects of this community. I don't leave it up to a few people. So what went wrong? What went right in this story? Well, what went wrong was because people didn't act, people weren't involved, there was an establishment of two bullies, two tyrants. And what did they do? They ended up putting their wives on the board, and they didn't listen to the board or to the other members. Anytime people were dissenting, all they would do is simply adjourn the meeting, and they thought that they had kind of had the upper hand. And people were getting more and more upset. And if you don't think that these guys were bullies and tyrants, remember that one quote by Mr. Ostrander in that audio that we played earlier today. He said, if I'm going to die screaming at someone, I'm going to die screaming at them. And then he went on to say, I love profanity. How wonderful. That's the kind of person I want to have run my homeowners association. So what did the homeowners do? What went right was the homeowners finally realized we need to participate. And what that meant was they went out to change their HOA, and I'm proud of what they did. They went door to door, concerned and active participants now of the HOA, and they asked people to sign a petition. Because in, I think, just about most states, in most governing documents, there's the ability that if you do not like what's happening with the board of directors and those that are governing your HOA, you have the ability, you have the right to be able to get a petition signed by no fewer than 25% of the homeowners in your HOA. And what you would do is you would say, we want to have a special meeting for the purpose to discuss whether or not to keep these people on the board. And so they went out and they got that petition signed by well over 25% in this HOA. They brought it next to the board, which was the right thing to do. And what did the board do? Well, in fine fashion, they did what they did all the time, and that was they just simply adjourned the meeting. Now, what went wrong? Well, what went wrong was what you heard was the screaming and the yelling and the fist fighting and just all of the things that went on after that. That's the part that went wrong. We need to understand that when we live in the government that we do, it's a very special one. And that is, we get the government that we want by participating and by us being governed, giving our consent to those that govern over us. And in this particular case, if that didn't happen, if the board wasn't going to listen to or acknowledge this petition that was being signed, what they needed to do was indeed their next step, and that was they turned to the court system because it is a civil issue. And once you end up going, I think you could take a claim like this to small claims court and show any judge what you have in front of you, what the governing documents say about your rights to have that special meeting, and that the board did not allow that to take place. Once you get a judgment from the court on that issue, then I would imagine those people would allow it to take place. If they didn't, here's the wonderful thing that takes place next. You can take that judgment and take it to the sheriff's department. And then what the sheriff does is the sheriff says, okay, go ahead and have that meeting scheduled. And if that meeting isn't allowed, and if those board members show up and say it's not going to take place, now all of a sudden the sheriff has a direction from the judge in how things were determined, and those people would be taken away. You would be able to have that special meeting. You would be able to have the vote that you want and have it take place. But the key here is that it happens peacefully. One of the wonderful things that happens in our government is that no matter what, even though you have different parties with different views and people of different political persuasions, one of the things that's happened for over 200 plus years of the founding of this country is that every 4 years, when there is another election, you always have the peaceful transfer of power from one person to the next. That is a right that we have as Americans, and there is nothing that is more sacred than that right, but that takes participation in our freedom, in our liberty, not just on the federal level, but in the HOA as well. Well, we're going to take a break. Don't go away. We've got more of Where You Live after these messages.